Blood streaked down Amelia Prescott's face as she stood trembling on the rough wooden auction platform, her wrists bound so tightly that her fingers had gone numb. The blazing Arizona sun beat down mercilessly, making the world spin around her as she fought to remain conscious. The wound on her temple, a parting gift from the outlaw who'd captured her after the stagecoach attack, had reopened, sending a warm trickle of crimson down her neck and staining the torn collar of her once pristine traveling dress. "Next up, gentlemen, a fine specimen." The auctioneer's voice boomed across the dusty square of Promise Creek. "A bit damaged in transport, but nothing that won't heal. City bred from back east with education enough to read and write. Might make a fine house servant or whatever else you fancy." Amelia's vision blurred with tears of rage and terror. Just 3 weeks ago, she had been safely ensconced in her father's Boston home, preparing to take a teaching position in San Francisco. Now, in the brutal summer of 1875, she stood on an auction block in a frontier town she'd never heard of, being sold like cattle to the highest bidder. The crowd of men before her, miners, cowboys, and roughnecks of every description, leered and called out crude remarks. Some even reached toward the platform, their fingers grasping at the air inches from her skirts. The auctioneer slapped his hand against her shoulder, causing her to stumble forward. "Bidding starts at $20. Do I hear 20? 15. Shouted a grizzled miner with tobacco-stained teeth. Now, chided the auctioneer. "This ain't damaged goods we're selling. $20 for an educated woman." "20, called a voice from the back. "25, countered another. Amelia's legs threatened to give way beneath her. This couldn't be happening, not in America, not in 1875. Slavery had been abolished a decade ago, yet here she stood. The lawlessness of the frontier had created a shadow world where human life held value only in dollars and cents. $50. A new voice cut through the escalating bids. The crowd parted, revealing a tall figure whose face was shadowed beneath the brim of a worn Stetson. Dust coated his denim pants and leather chaps, marking him as a working cowboy rather than a town dweller. He stepped forward, his spurs jingling with each deliberate stride. $50. The auctioneer's eyes lit up. "Do I hear 60, 65, called the tobacco-chewing miner. The cowboy's hand moved to rest on the holstered Colt at his hip. $100, he stated, his voice quiet but carrying an undeniable authority that silenced the crowd. The auctioneer's eyes widened. $100, going once. No one dared to counter the bid. The cowboy's stance, legs slightly apart, shoulders squared, communicated a readiness for trouble that even the drunkest bidder could recognize. Going twice. The auctioneer looked around hopefully. "Sold, to the gentleman in the back." As the cowboy approached the platform, Amelia got her first clear look at him. He appeared to be in his early 30s, with a face weathered by sun and wind. His eyes, a startling shade of blue against his tanned skin, assessed her with an intensity that made her heart race with fresh fear. The auctioneer thrust out his hand. "Cash in advance, mister." Without taking his eyes from Amelia, the cowboy pulled a leather pouch from his vest pocket and counted out the gold coins. Then he climbed the steps to the platform and approached her. Amelia tried to back away, but her bound hands threw her off balance, and she nearly fell. Strong hands caught her by the shoulders to steady her, then released her immediately. "Stand still," he murmured, drawing a knife from his belt. Amelia froze, certain her last moments had come. Instead, the blade slipped between her wrists, cutting through the rope with a quick motion. Blood rushed painfully back into her hands as they fell free. "You're bleeding," he observed, his voice pitched low enough that only she could hear. Then louder, For the benefit of the crowd that still lingered watching, he declared, "She's mine to protect now. And anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me." Whispers rippled through the onlookers. The cowboy removed his bandana and pressed it gently against the wound on her temple. "Name's Owen Zachariah," he said quietly. "Can you walk, miss?" Amelia swallowed hard, finding her voice. "I think so." "Good. My horse is just down the street. We need to get you out of here before sundown." "Where?" Amelia's voice cracked. "Where are you taking me?" Owen's expression remained unreadable as he guided her down the steps, one hand lightly supporting her elbow. "Somewhere safe. That's all you need to know for now." The crowd parted reluctantly as Owen led Amelia through. She felt their eyes boring into her back, heard their muttered disappointments. One man stepped forward as if to block their path, but a single look from Owen made him reconsider and step aside. At the hitching post stood a magnificent chestnut stallion, its coat gleaming like polished copper in the afternoon sun. Owen untied the reins and turned to Amelia. "Can you ride?" Yes," she answered, summoning what remained of her dignity. "I can ride." He nodded, seeming satisfied with her response. "Good. We've got ground to cover before nightfall." With surprising gentleness, he helped her onto the saddle, then swung up behind her. His chest pressed against her back, and his arms reached around her to take the reins, creating a circle that felt both threatening and oddly protective. Amelia sat rigidly, uncertain whether she'd escaped one danger only to face another. As they rode out of town, Amelia risked a question. "Mr. Zachariah, why did you buy me?" For several moments there was only the rhythmic sound of the horse's hooves on the hard, packed dirt. Then Owen spoke, his breath warm against her ear. "No one should own another person, Miss Prescott," she supplied. "Amelia Prescott, Miss Prescott." "I didn't buy you. I paid the price to free you." Relief washed over her, so powerful that she nearly sagged against him, but wariness quickly followed. "Then why did you say I was yours to protect? Where are we going?" Because in these parts, a woman alone might as well wear a target. "And we're going to my ranch about 15 miles north of here. Once you're recovered, I'll help you get wherever it is you're trying to go." Amelia closed her eyes briefly, absorbing this information. "Thank you," she said finally, the words inadequate for what he'd done. Owen made a noncommittal sound. "Don't thank me yet, Miss Prescott. We're still in dangerous country." As if to emphasize his point, he urged the horse into a faster trot, sending them galloping away from Promise Creek and toward the rugged landscape beyond, where the setting sun cast long shadows across the vast, unforgiving terrain of the Arizona Territory. The ride to Owen's ranch felt interminable to Amelia. Each jolt of the horse's gait sent fresh waves of pain through her battered body. The wound on her temple had stopped bleeding, but a dull throb had set up residence behind her eyes, and her wrists burned where the ropes had cut into her skin. She found herself leaning back against Owen's solid presence more than once when dizziness threatened to overtake her. As twilight deepened into true darkness, the outline of a modest ranch house came into view. A single lamp burned in the window, casting a square of golden light onto the hard, packed earth of the yard. "Home," Owen said simply, slowing his stallion to a walk. Amelia peered through the gathering darkness. The house was small but well built, with a covered porch stretching across the front. A barn and corral stood to one side, and beyond them she could make out the shadowy forms of cattle grazing on open rangeland that seemed to stretch forever into the night. As they approached, the door to the house swung open, and a slender figure stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand. "That you, Owen?" called a woman's voice. "It's me, Maggie. Put that rifle away before you shoot someone." The figure Maggie lowered the gun. "You're late. Was starting to worry the Callahan gang caught up with you. Owen dismounted in one fluid motion, then reached up to help Amelia down. Her legs buckled the moment they touched the ground, and he caught her against his chest. "You've got company," Maggie observed, stepping closer. In the dim light spilling from the house, Amelia could see she was a woman of perhaps 50, with steel gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and sharp, assessing eyes. "This is Miss Amelia Prescott," Owen explained, supporting Amelia with one arm around her waist. "Miss Prescott, this is Margaret Thornton, my housekeeper." Maggie's eyebrows rose as she took in Amelia's blood-stained dress and disheveled appearance. "What sort of trouble have you brought home now, Owen Zachariah?" "The kind that needs tending to," he replied evenly. "She was being sold at auction in Promise Creek." Maggie's expression hardened. "Those animals! Come on then, let's get her inside." Together they helped Amelia into the house. The interior was simple but comfortable, with a main room that served as both kitchen and living area. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and a cooking stove stood in the corner with a kettle steaming on its surface. The furniture was sturdy and functional: a table with 4 chairs, a bookshelf filled with well-worn volumes, and a pair of armchairs near the fireplace. They lowered Amelia into one of these chairs, and she sank gratefully into its cushioned depths. "I'll fetch water and bandages," Maggie said, already moving toward a cupboard. Owen knelt in front of Amelia, his blue eyes searching her face. "How bad are you hurt, besides the cut on your head?" Amelia took a shaky inventory of her injuries, bruises mostly. She swallowed hard, pushing away the memory of rough hands dragging her from the stagecoach. "They weren't gentle when they took me." A muscle twitched in Owen's jaw. "Who were they?" "I don't know their names." 3 men attacked the stagecoach about a week's journey from here. They killed the driver and the guard. Amelia's voice faltered. "And a woman who was traveling with her young son. The boy escaped, I think. At least, I hope he did. They didn't find him when they searched." Maggie returned with a basin of water and clean cloths. "Let me see that head wound." As the older woman cleaned the cut on her temple, Amelia continued her story, feeling a desperate need to explain herself. "I was traveling to San Francisco to take a teaching position. My father arranged everything: the job, my accommodations. He's expecting letters from me. He'll be frantic when they don't arrive." Owen listened intently, his expression grave. "The men who took you, where are they now?" "They sold me to the auctioneer yesterday. Said they were heading to Tucson after." "Likely story," Maggie muttered as she applied a stinging salve to Amelia's wound. "More likely they're still in the territory, causing trouble." Owen stood, moving to stare out the window into the darkness. "I need to report this to Marshal Collins when he comes through next week." Amelia winced as Maggie bandaged her temple. "Will he be able to help me get to San Francisco?" Owen and Maggie exchanged a look that Amelia couldn't interpret. "That's a difficult journey even with proper escort," Owen said carefully. "And right now, you're in no condition to travel." "But my position will have to wait," Maggie finished firmly. "You need food and rest, and those clothes need burning." As if to punctuate her statement, she helped Amelia to her feet. "Come along. I'll find you something clean to wear and make up the spare room." Amelia allowed herself to be led through a doorway into a small bedroom. Maggie rummaged in a trunk and produced a simple cotton nightgown and a worn but clean wrapper. "These were my daughters," she explained. "They should fit well enough for now." "Your daughter?" Amelia asked. Maggie's face tightened. "She passed on 5 years ago, influenza." "I'm so sorry," Amelia said softly. "And thank you for your kindness." Maggie nodded briskly, brushing aside the gratitude. "Get changed. I'll bring you some supper. You look like you haven't had a proper meal in days." Left alone, Amelia slowly peeled off her ruined dress, revealing a landscape of bruises across her arms and ribs. The cool night air raised goosebumps on her skin as she quickly donned the borrowed nightgown. It was slightly too large but wonderfully clean and soft against her abraded skin. When Maggie returned with a tray bearing a bowl of stew and a chunk of bread, Amelia was sitting on the edge of the narrow bed, combing through her tangled hair with her fingers. "Eat," Maggie instructed, setting the tray beside her. "Then sleep. Things will look clearer in the morning." But as Amelia forced herself to take small spoonfuls of the savory stew, she wondered if anything would ever be clear again. Her carefully planned future had vanished like morning mist in the desert sun, leaving her adrift in a dangerous land with strangers whose motives she couldn't be certain of. Yet as exhaustion claimed her and she sank back against the pillow, one thought provided a small measure of comfort. Owen Zechariah had stepped forward when no one else would. Whatever his reasons, he had saved her from a fate too terrible to contemplate. With that thought, she surrendered to sleep, deeper and more secure than any she had known since the stagecoach attack. Morning arrived with the crowing of a rooster and the smell of coffee brewing. Amelia woke disoriented, momentarily forgetting where she was. The events of the previous day crashed back into her consciousness, and she sat up with a small gasp of distress. Sunlight streamed through the room's single window, illuminating a space that was larger than it had appeared in the darkness. Besides the bed, there was a washstand with a pitcher and basin, a small chest of drawers, and a rocking chair in the corner. A braided rug covered part of the wooden floor, adding a touch of hominess to the frontier bedroom. A soft knock at the door preceded Maggie's entrance. The housekeeper carried a steaming pitcher of water and a bundle of clothing. "Good, you're awake," she said without preamble. "How's the head?" Amelia touched the bandage tentatively. "Better, I think. Less painful." "Good. I've brought wash water and some clothes. They're simple, just a work skirt and shirtwaist, but they're clean and should fit well enough." "Thank you, Mrs. Thornton." "Maggie," the older woman corrected. "No need for formality out here." As Maggie poured water into the basin, Amelia gathered her courage to ask the question that had troubled her dreams. "Maggie, what kind of man is Mr. Zechariah?" The housekeeper's hand stilled for a moment before she continued her task. "A good one," she said finally. "Better than most you'll find in these parts. Owen came west after the war between the states, built this ranch from nothing but determination and hard work. He lives here alone, except for you, I mean. He has 2 ranch hands who help with the cattle, Lewis and Charlie. They live in the bunkhouse by the barn." Maggie's shrewd eyes assessed Amelia. "If you're worried about your reputation, don't be. Owen's a gentleman. He won't take liberties." A blush heated Amelia's cheeks. "I didn't mean to imply, no offense taken. It's a natural concern for a proper young lady." Maggie set down the now empty pitcher. "Get washed and dressed. Breakfast is nearly ready, and Owen will want to check on you." After Maggie left, Amelia rose on unsteady legs and made her way to the washstand. The cool water felt heavenly against her skin as she carefully washed away the last traces of blood and grime. The borrowed clothes fit reasonably well. The skirt was a bit short, revealing her ankles, but the shirtwaist was comfortable and the fabric sturdy. She had just finished plaiting her hair into a single braid when another knock sounded. "Miss Prescott," Owen's deep voice called. "Are you decent?" "Yes, come in." The door opened and Owen stepped inside, removing his hat as he did so. In the clear light of morning, Amelia could see him properly for the first time. His hair was the rich brown of aged mahogany, with sun-bleached streaks at the temples. His features were strong and well-defined, a straight nose, firm jaw shadowed with stubble, and those remarkable blue eyes that seemed to see right through her. "You're looking better," he observed, his gaze taking in the borrowed clothes and her improved color. "I feel better. Thank you for—" She gestured vaguely, encompassing everything: the rescue, the shelter, his kindness. Owen nodded once, accepting her gratitude without comment. "There's breakfast waiting. Can you walk to the kitchen, or should I help you?" "I can walk," Amelia said firmly, determined to demonstrate some independence. They moved together to the main room, where Maggie was setting platters of food on the table. The aroma of bacon, biscuits, and strong coffee filled the air, making Amelia's stomach rumble embarrassingly. "Sit," Maggie ordered, pointing to a chair. "Both of you, before it gets cold." Owen pulled out Amelia's chair for her, then took his own seat across the table. For a moment, he bowed his head in silent prayer before reaching for the coffee pot. As they ate, Owen outlined the situation as he saw it. "You're welcome to stay here until you're fully recovered, Miss Prescott. When Marshal Collins comes through next week, we can report what happened and see about getting word to your father in Boston." "And San Francisco?" Amelia asked hopefully. "My teaching position is likely filled by now," Maggie interjected, not unkindly. "School term would have started already." Amelia set down her fork, her appetite suddenly diminished. "Then what am I to do? I can't impose on your hospitality indefinitely." "You won't be imposing if you earn your keep," Owen said. "Maggie could use help with the house, and I know she's been wanting to expand the vegetable garden." "I'm not much of a gardener," Amelia admitted, "but I can cook and clean, and I'm good with numbers and correspondence." Owen's expression lightened slightly. "That could be useful. I've been meaning to organize the ranch accounts better." "Then it's settled," Maggie declared, pouring more coffee for everyone. "You'll stay and help out until we can make proper arrangements for your future." The practical solution should have reassured Amelia, but instead, a wave of despair washed over her. In the space of a week, she had lost everything: her possessions, her position, her carefully laid plans. Now she was dependent on the charity of strangers in a wild land far from home. Owen must have read something of her thoughts in her face. "It's temporary, Miss Prescott, just until we can send word to your father and make safe arrangements for your journey home." "Of course," she said, forcing a smile. "And please call me Amelia." It seemed silly to stand on ceremony under the circumstances. "Amelia, then," he nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "And I'm Owen." For the first time since the stagecoach attack, Amelia felt a small spark of hope. She wasn't alone. She was safe, at least for now, and in the company of people who seemed genuinely concerned for her welfare. After breakfast, Maggie insisted that Amelia rest, but by mid-afternoon she was restless enough to venture outside. The Arizona sun beat down fiercely, but a breeze made the heat tolerable as Amelia explored the immediate surroundings of the ranch house. From the porch, she could see the full extent of Owen's property, a modest but well-maintained ranch with a barn, corral, chicken coop, and small vegetable garden enclosed by a rough fence. Beyond these structures stretched open rangeland, dotted with scrub and the occasional juniper tree. In the distance, purple mountains rose against the impossibly blue sky. The sound of pounding hooves drew her attention to the corral, where Owen was working with a spirited young horse. He moved with the easy grace of a man completely at home in his environment, his voice a low, steady stream of encouragement as the colt circled the enclosure. Amelia watched, fascinated, as horse and man engaged in what seemed almost like a dance, Owen directing with subtle movements of a long rope, the colt responding with gradually decreasing resistance. "He's good with horses." Amelia started at Maggie's voice beside her. She hadn't heard the housekeeper approach. I can see that, Amelia agreed. That colt was wild 3 weeks ago. Maggie handed Amelia a glass of water. Owen has a way with animals, people too, sometimes. Amelia sipped the cool water gratefully. How long have you worked for him? 6 years now. Came after my Sarah died. Needed the work, and Owen needed someone to keep house. Maggie's weathered face softened slightly. He was just starting out then. Ranch wasn't much more than a shack and a dozen head of cattle. He's built it up impressively. Through hard work and smart choices. Owen doesn't take risks unless they're calculated ones. Maggie gave Amelia a pointed look. Which is why I was surprised when he brought you home yesterday. Taking on a woman in trouble isn't like him. Amelia didn't know how to respond to that. I'm grateful he did. As you should be, but I wonder. Maggie trailed off, her gaze returning to Owen in the corral. Wonder what he saw in you that made him take that risk. Before Amelia could pursue this intriguing comment, a shout from the direction of the road caught their attention. A cloud of dust announced the approach of a rider. Owen immediately abandoned his work with the colt and strode to the fence, one hand dropping to the revolver at his hip. Maggie tensed beside Amelia. Get inside, the housekeeper ordered tersely. But now, girl, until we know who's coming. Reluctantly, Amelia retreated to the doorway, but she didn't go inside. From this vantage point, she could still see the approaching rider while remaining partly concealed. As the horseman drew closer, Owen's posture relaxed slightly. The newcomer was a lean, weathered man of about Owen's age, dressed in the practical garb of a cowboy but with a silver star pinned to his vest. Marshall Collins, Maggie identified for Amelia's benefit. Wasn't expecting him until next week. The marshal dismounted in a fluid motion and clasped hands with Owen. Their conversation was too distant for Amelia to hear, but she could read tension in the set of Owen's shoulders. After a brief exchange, both men turned toward the house. Owen beckoned to Amelia. Come meet Marshal Collins, he called. He's here about what happened in Promise Creek. Gathering her courage, Amelia stepped fully onto the porch and made her way to where the men stood. Miss Prescott, this is U.S. Marshal Daniel Collins, Owen introduced. Marshal, Miss Amelia Prescott of Boston. The marshal tipped his hat politely. Madam, I understand you've had a rough welcome to our territory. That's putting it mildly, Amelia replied, her voice steadier than she felt. I'd like to hear your account of what happened, if you feel up to telling it. Owen's hand came to rest lightly on her shoulder. We can talk inside, out of this heat. The small gesture of support gave Amelia strength as they moved into the house. Over cups of coffee provided by Maggie, she recounted the stagecoach attack, her capture, and the horror of the auction block. The marshal took notes in a small leather-bound book, his expression growing grimmer with each detail she provided. And you say there were 3 attackers. He confirmed when she'd finished. Yes, 2 younger men in their 20s, I'd guess, and an older man they called Boss. He had a scar across his right cheek. Marshal Collins exchanged a significant look with Owen. Sounds like the Harding brothers and their uncle, Jacob Harding. They've been terrorizing travelers between here and Tucson for months. You know them? Amelia asked, leaning forward. Know of them. They're wanted for robbery, assault, murder. The marshal's mouth twisted. And now human trafficking, it seems. Will you be able to find them? Owen asked. I'll try. Got a posse forming in Tucson already. This isn't the first complaint we've had about that auction block in Promise Creek either. Collins turned back to Amelia. Miss Prescott, I'm truly sorry for what you've endured. The frontier attracts good people looking for a fresh start, but it also draws the worst kind of predators. What can be done about my situation? Amelia asked, her voice small. I need to contact my father to let him know I'm alive. And then, and then you'll need safe passage either back east or on to California, Collins finished for her. I can help with getting a telegram to your father when I return to Tucson. As for safe travel, he shook his head. That's more complicated. The stage line is still running, but after what happened, I wouldn't recommend it for a lady traveling alone. She can stay here until proper arrangements can be made, Owen stated firmly. The marshal nodded. That's probably wisest. The Hardings might still be looking for her if they learn she escaped the auction. A chill ran down Amelia's spine. They would come after me, they might, Collins confirmed grimly. They don't like losing merchandise or witnesses. Owen's jaw tightened. She'll be safe here. Lewis, Charlie, and I are well armed, and the ranch is isolated enough that strangers stand out. The marshal stood, preparing to leave. I'll send word when I've contacted your father, Miss Prescott. In the meantime, stay close to the ranch. Owen's right, you're safer here than anywhere else in the territory right now. After Collins departed, a heavy silence fell over the room. Amelia stared at her hands, folded tightly in her lap, trying to absorb the new reality of her situation. Not only was she stranded in the Arizona territory, but she was possibly being hunted by the same men who had already demonstrated their brutal disregard for human life. Owen cleared his throat. Amelia, I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. She looked up, meeting his concerned gaze. No, it isn't. But I'm not naive enough to ignore good advice, especially when it comes from a U.S. Marshal. She attempted a smile. It seems I'll be imposing on your hospitality a bit longer than we thought. It's not an imposition, Owen assured her, and it won't be forever. No, Amelia agreed softly. Not forever. But as she rose to help Maggie prepare the evening meal, Amelia couldn't help wondering how long not forever might be, and what would become of her in this wild, dangerous land so far from everything she had ever known. The days at Owen's ranch fell into a rhythm that Amelia found unexpectedly comforting. Each morning she rose with the sun, helping Maggie prepare breakfast for Owen and his two ranch hands before tackling the day's household chores. In the afternoons, she often worked in the small garden or assisted Owen with the ranch ledgers, applying her neat handwriting and facility with numbers to bring order to his financial records. A week passed, then two, with no word from Marshal Collins. The wait was maddening, but Amelia tried to keep faith that he had reached her father and that plans for her future were being made. On a particularly warm afternoon about 3 weeks after her arrival, Amelia sat on the porch, shelling peas from the garden into a large wooden bowl. The repetitive task allowed her mind to wander, and she found herself watching Owen as he worked with the young colt in the corral. Over the past weeks, the animal had progressed from wary circling to accepting a saddle, and today, Owen was attempting to mount for the first time. His patience with the nervous horse struck a chord in Amelia. It reminded her of how he had treated her since her arrival, with a gentle respect that never presumed too much, but was always steadfastly present when needed. "You're staring again," Maggie observed, emerging from the house with a pitcher of lemonade. Amelia felt her cheeks warm. "I was just admiring his horsemanship. Hum." Maggie set the pitcher on the small table beside Amelia's chair. "Among other things, I suspect, Maggie." Amelia protested, but couldn't suppress a small smile. The housekeeper chuckled, settling into the other chair. "No harm in looking, girl. Owen's a fine man by any measure." Amelia returned her attention to the peas, but her thoughts remained with the cowboy in the corral. There was no denying that she had developed feelings for him over these weeks, feelings that went beyond gratitude for her rescue. She admired his quiet strength, his integrity, The way he treated everyone from his ranch hands to the stray dogs that sometimes wandered onto the property with the same steady respect. But what did he think of her? Sometimes, she caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite interpret. And occasionally, when their hands brushed as they worked on the ledgers together, she sensed a tension that suggested she wasn't alone in feeling a connection. Yet Owen maintained a careful distance, never overstepping the boundaries of propriety. Was it merely respect, or did he not share her growing attraction? "He lost someone, you know," Maggie said suddenly, as if reading Amelia's thoughts. Amelia's hand stilled. "What do you mean?" Maggie sipped her lemonade before answering. "During the war, he was engaged to a girl back in Pennsylvania. She took ill with typhoid while he was fighting, passed before he could get home on leave." "How terrible," Amelia murmured, her heart constricting at the thought of Owen's pain. "He doesn't speak of it," Maggie continued, "but he carries it with him. It's why he came west after the war ended, too many memories back east." "Is that why he's never married?" Maggie shrugged. "Partly, perhaps, and partly because good women are scarce out here. But mostly, I think, because he hasn't found someone who makes him want to risk his heart again." The conversation ended as Owen led the colt back to the barn, looking satisfied with the day's progress. When he approached the porch, his shirt damp with sweat and his hair tousled by the wind, Amelia felt a flutter in her stomach that had nothing to do with the afternoon heat. "Ladies," he greeted them, removing his hat. "That lemonade looks mighty appealing right now." Maggie rose. "I'll fetch another glass." As the housekeeper disappeared inside, Amelia and Owen were left alone on the porch. A comfortable silence settled between them as Amelia continued shelling peas and Owen leaned against the porch railing, gazing out at his land. "The colt's coming along nicely," Amelia observed. Owen nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "He's got spirit, but he's learning to trust. That's the key with horses, building trust." "And with people?" Amelia asked softly. His eyes shifted to her face, studying her with that intensity that never failed to make her pulse quicken. "With people too, I suppose." Maggie returned with a glass for Owen, and the moment passed. But later that evening, after supper had been cleared away and Maggie had retired to her room, Amelia found herself alone with Owen again as they sat before the fireplace. Though the days were warm, the desert nights could be surprisingly cool, and the small fire cast a golden glow over the room. Owen was reading a dog-eared copy of The Count of Monte Cristo, while Amelia worked on mending one of his shirts. The domesticity of the scene struck her suddenly. How comfortable it felt, how right, as if they had been sharing evenings like this for years rather than weeks. "You miss teaching?" Owen asked unexpectedly, looking up from his book. Amelia considered the question. "I miss the idea of teaching, I suppose. I never actually started the position in San Francisco." "But you were trained for it." "Yes. I attended the normal school in Boston. My father insisted on it, even though many of his friends thought higher education was wasted on a woman." She smiled at the memory of her father's stubborn support. "He said a woman should always be able to support herself, just in case." "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He is." "I worry about him, alone in Boston. My mother died when I was 14, and I've been keeping house for him since then. This is the first time we've been separated." Owen closed his book, giving her his full attention. "When Marshall Collins returns with news, would you prefer to go back to Boston rather than continue to San Francisco?" The question caught Amelia off guard. She had been so focused on simply establishing contact with her father that she hadn't seriously considered what would come next. "I am not sure," she admitted. "San Francisco was a new beginning, a chance to build my own life. But after everything that's happened—" "The West can be harsh," Owen acknowledged. It's not for everyone. Something in his tone made Amelia straighten her spine. I didn't say I couldn't handle it. What happened to me was terrible, but it doesn't mean the entire West is beyond redemption. A hint of admiration flickered in Owen's eyes. No, it doesn't. And for what it's worth, you've shown remarkable resilience these past weeks. Thank you, Amelia said, a pleased flush warming her cheeks, though I haven't had much choice but to adapt. There's always a choice, Owen countered gently. You could have retreated into fear or bitterness. Instead, you've embraced life here, learning new skills, contributing to the ranch. His praise meant more to Amelia than she wanted to admit. I've had good teachers, she said, holding his gaze for a long moment. They looked at each other across the small space between their chairs. The fire crackled, sending shadows dancing across Owen's features, highlighting the strong line of his jaw and the warmth in his eyes. Amelia felt the atmosphere between them shift, charged with something unspoken yet powerful. Owen seemed to feel it too, for he leaned forward slightly as if drawn toward her. The sudden bark of a dog outside broke the spell. Owen stood quickly, his hand moving instinctively to the revolver he kept on the side table. Stay here, he instructed, his voice now all business. He moved to the window, peering out into the darkness. The dog, a mongrel named Patch that had adopted the ranch a year ago, continued barking with increasing urgency. Something's wrong, Owen muttered, reaching for his rifle from the rack by the door. Patch doesn't raise alarm without cause. Fear clutched at Amelia's heart. The Hardings, maybe, or just coyotes after the chickens. Owen checked his rifle, then grabbed his hat. Either way, I need to check. Bar the door behind me and don't open it unless you hear my voice. After he left, Amelia did as instructed, sliding the heavy wooden bar into place across the door. Then she stood in the center of the room, listening intently. The dog's barking had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that seemed more threatening than the noise. Minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness. Amelia moved to the window, straining to see into the darkness. The moon was just a sliver in the sky, providing little illumination. A gunshot shattered the night, followed by a second in rapid succession. Amelia gasped, stepping back from the window instinctively. More shots followed, 3, 4, 5 coming from different directions. Then shouting, though she couldn't make out the words, remembering Owen's instructions to stay inside, Amelia nevertheless found herself moving toward the rifle rack. There was one weapon left, a shotgun that Owen had shown her how to load and fire just in case. Her hands trembled as she took it down and checked that it was loaded, exactly as he had taught her. A pounding at the door made her jump. "Amelia, open up, it's me." Owen's voice, urgent but unmistakable. She hurried to remove the bar and swung the door open to find him supporting Maggie, who had a makeshift bandage wrapped around her upper arm, dark with blood. "What happened?" Amelia gasped, stepping aside to let them enter. "Raiders," Owen said tersely, helping Maggie to a chair. "4 of them. They shot at Lewis when he went to check on the horses, then started firing at the house. The Hardings, I think so, couldn't see clearly in the dark, but one had a scar I could make out in the lantern light." Maggie winced as Amelia carefully unwrapped the bloody bandage to examine her wound. "Caught me coming back from the outhouse," the housekeeper explained through gritted teeth. "Just a graze, but it bled like the devil. Where are they now?" Amelia asked, pressing a clean cloth against Maggie's wound. "Gone for the moment. Charlie and Lewis drove them off, but they'll be back." Owen's expression was grim. "They were asking for the woman. They know you're here, Amelia." A cold dread settled in her stomach. "How?" "Someone in Promise Creek must have talked. Word travels fast in small communities." Owen checked his rifle, then moved to the window again, scanning the darkness. We need to get you somewhere safer. Safer than here, Amelia questioned, applying a fresh bandage to Maggie's arm. Where would that be? The old Morrison cabin about 3 miles into the hills. Owen pointed vaguely toward the mountains. It's abandoned but solid, and it's hard to find if you don't know it's there. You want to move Maggie in her condition. Not Maggie, just you. Owen turned to face her, his expression resolute. The Hardings want you specifically. With you gone from the ranch, they might leave the rest of us alone. I'm not leaving you all to face danger because of me, Amelia protested. It's not open for debate, Owen said firmly. Charlie's saddling 2 horses now. We leave as soon as it's fully dark in about an hour. 2 horses. Amelia caught the implication immediately. You're coming with me, Owen nodded once. I'm not sending you into the hills alone, Amelia. I promised to protect you, and I mean to keep that promise. The conviction in his voice silenced any further argument. Amelia turned her attention back to Maggie's wound, trying to ignore the mix of fear and something dangerously close to anticipation that coursed through her at the thought of being alone with Owen in a remote cabin. Within the hour, Amelia had packed a small bundle of essentials, a change of clothes, some food, medical supplies, and a blanket. Owen added ammunition, a lantern, matches, and a canteen of water to their provisions. Lewis and Charlie will stay with Maggie, Owen explained as they prepared to leave. They'll send word to Marshal Collins if they can get a rider through to Promise Creek. Maggie, pale but determined, gripped Amelia's hand before they departed. Be careful, girl, and watch over this stubborn man for me. I will, Amelia promised, blinking back tears. Despite the short time she had known the housekeeper, Maggie had become something of a surrogate mother to her, and leaving her wounded felt like a betrayal. They slipped out the back door and made their way to where Charlie waited with 2 horses, Owen's chestnut stallion and a smaller, sure-footed mare for Amelia. Stay off the main trails, Charlie advised in a low voice, and watch for riders to the north. I spotted movement there earlier. Owen nodded grimly. If they come back to the ranch, hold them off as long as you can, then retreat to the Wilsons' place if necessary. Don't take unnecessary risks. Yes, boss. Charlie helped Amelia mount, then handed up her bundle. Good luck, Miss Prescott. They rode out in silence, keeping to the shadows and moving slowly to minimize noise. Once they were a safe distance from the ranch, Owen led them into a narrow ravine that wound gradually upward toward the foothills. The journey was tense, with frequent stops to listen for pursuers. Amelia's heart pounded with each unexplained sound, the rustle of nocturnal animals, the whisper of wind through junipers, the occasional fall of loose rock. After what felt like hours, they emerged from the ravine onto a small plateau. In the faint moonlight, Amelia could make out the silhouette of a crude cabin nestled against a rock face. Morrison's place, Owen whispered, dismounting. It's not much, but it's defensible. He helped Amelia down from her horse, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. Even in the midst of danger, she was acutely aware of his proximity, the warmth of his body in the cool night air. They led the horses to a small corral behind the cabin, where a trickle of water from a natural spring provided for their needs. Then Owen approached the cabin door, gun drawn as a precaution. The interior was musty but intact, a single room with a stone fireplace, a rough-hewn table with 1 chair, and a narrow bed frame covered with an ancient straw tick. Dust lay thick on every surface, undisturbed for what might have been years. Not exactly the Palmer House Hotel, Owen remarked wryly as he lit the lantern. Amelia managed a smile despite her exhaustion and fear. I've stayed in worse places recently. Owen's expression sobered immediately. I'm sorry, Amelia. I never wanted to put you in danger again." "You didn't," she assured him, setting down her bundle on the table. "The Hardings did, and you're trying to keep me safe just as you promised." He nodded, but the worry didn't leave his eyes as he moved around the cabin, checking the integrity of the walls and the single window. "We should be secure here," he said finally. "The cabin is built against the rock, so they can only approach from the front. And there's a good view of the trail from the window." Amelia sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly overwhelmed by the events of the night. "How long will we need to stay? A few days, perhaps, until Marshal Collins can organize a proper response to the Hardings." Owen hesitated, then added, "I'm sorry about the sleeping arrangements. I'll make a pallet on the floor for myself." "Don't be ridiculous," Amelia said, fatigue making her more direct than she might otherwise have been. "The bed is large enough for both of us, and you need rest as much as I do if we're to defend this place." Owen's eyebrows rose at her forthright statement. "That wouldn't be proper, Amelia. Neither is being hunted by outlaws, but here we are," she countered. "I trust you, Owen, completely." Something shifted in his expression, a softening, a vulnerability that he rarely allowed to show. "Your trust means a great deal to me." They worked together to make the cabin more habitable, sweeping out the worst of the dust and arranging their supplies. By the time they finished, exhaustion was pulling at both of them. "You take the bed," Owen insisted. "I'll keep first watch." Too tired to argue further, Amelia removed only her boots before lying down on the straw tick. Despite its roughness, it felt like heaven to her weary body. As sleep claimed her, her last awareness was of Owen sitting by the window, his rifle across his knees, his profile outlined against the night sky, her protector, her friend, and perhaps, someday, something more. Amelia woke to pale sunlight filtering through the cabin's single window and the smell of coffee brewing. For a moment, she was disoriented, then the events of the previous night rushed back. She sat up quickly, looking around for Owen. He stood at the crude fireplace, pouring coffee into a tin cup. When he turned and saw her awake, a smile softened his features. "Morning," he greeted her, crossing to the bed and offering the cup. "Sleep well. Better than I expected," Amelia admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. The warmth of the cup seeping into her cold fingers was a small but welcome comfort. "Did you sleep at all?" A few hours toward dawn, all quiet through the night. Now that daylight filled the cabin, Amelia could see it more clearly. Though primitive, it was solidly built, with thick log walls and a stone chimney. Someone had carved simple designs into the mantelpiece, pine trees and mountains, a legacy of the cabin's previous occupant. "Who was Morrison?" she asked, sipping the strong, bitter coffee. Owen leaned against the table, nursing his own cup. "Old prospector. Came out during the Silver Rush in '66, built this place as a base for his explorations. Never found his fortune but lived out here until his heart gave out 3 winters ago. No family, none that ever came looking for him. I helped bury him on that ridge." Owen nodded toward the window. Seemed the decent thing to do. This simple act of compassion for a lonely old man touched Amelia deeply. It was so characteristic of Owen's quiet decency without expectation of recognition or reward. "You're a good man, Owen Zachariah," she said softly. He looked away, seemingly embarrassed by her praise. "Just did what needed doing." Like rescuing a strange woman from an auction block, his eyes returned to her face, serious now. "That was different, how so?" Owen set down his empty cup and moved to the window, gazing out at the wilderness. For a long moment, he didn't answer, and Amelia thought he might avoid the question entirely. "When I saw you standing there," he finally said, his back still to her, bleeding and terrified but still holding your head up, "something in me couldn't walk away. not just because it was wrong what they were doing, but because. He hesitated, then turned to face her. Because I recognized something in you, a spirit that refused to be broken, even in the darkest moment. Amelia's breath caught at the intensity in his eyes, the raw honesty in his voice. I wasn't feeling very spirited, she admitted. I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Owen said, moving closer to where she sat on the bed. It's standing your ground despite it. The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with unspoken emotions. Amelia was acutely aware of his proximity, the way the morning light caught in his hair, the steady rise and fall of his chest. A sudden noise outside, the clatter of rocks tumbling down the hillside, broke the moment. Owen's hand flew to his gun as he moved swiftly to the window. "Get down," he ordered, his voice transformed from tender to commanding in an instant. Amelia slid from the bed to the floor, pressing herself against the wall as Owen peered cautiously around the edge of the window frame. "Dear," he reported after a tense moment, his shoulders relaxing. "Just a buck moving through." Relief washed over Amelia, but the brief scare had driven home the precariousness of their situation. "Do you think the Hardings will find us here?" Owen moved away from the window, checking his gun before returning it to his holster. "Not likely. Few people know about this cabin, and the approach is difficult if you don't know the trail. But not impossible." "No," he conceded. "Not impossible." The acknowledgement hung between them as they shared a simple breakfast of jerky and hardtack. Afterward, Owen proposed a careful reconnaissance of the immediate area to establish potential escape routes if they needed them. "Should I come with you?" Amelia asked, uncertain whether she would be safer with him or in the relative security of the cabin. Owen considered the question. "Better if you do. If someone did track us here, I don't want you trapped inside alone." They spent the morning exploring the terrain surrounding the cabin, a rugged landscape of pine-covered slopes, rocky outcroppings, and narrow game trails. Owen pointed out potential hiding places and the best routes for retreat if necessary. He also showed Amelia how to use landmarks to find her way back to the cabin if they became separated. "You're a quick study," he observed as she correctly identified a return route from a particularly confusing jumble of boulders. "I had an excellent geography teacher at the normal school," Amelia replied with a small smile. "Though I never imagined applying those lessons quite this way." By midday, the heat had become intense, and they returned to the shade of the cabin. Owen suggested they rest during the hottest part of the day and continue their explorations in the cooler evening hours. Confined to the small space, they talked more openly than they had at the ranch, where Maggie's presence or ranch chores had provided constant distractions. Amelia told Owen about her childhood in Boston, her father's shipping business, and her mother's early death from consumption. Owen, in turn, shared stories of his Pennsylvania upbringing, his service in the Union Army, and his decision to seek a new beginning in the West after the war. "Maggie mentioned you were engaged once," Amelia said carefully, watching his face for signs that the subject was unwelcome. Owen's expression tightened briefly, but he nodded. "Her name was Rebecca. We grew up together in the same town, planned to marry after the war. I'm sorry you lost her." "It was a long time ago," Owen said, but the shadows in his eyes suggested the wound wasn't entirely healed. "What about you?" "No suitor waiting in Boston," Amelia shook her head. "There was a young man my father favored, son of his business partner, but I couldn't see spending my life with someone who viewed my interest in education as a temporary fancy to be indulged until children came along." Owen's mouth quirked in a half-smile. Sounds like a man who didn't appreciate what was in front of him. The compliment warmed Amelia more than it should have. My father was disappointed when I declined the match, but he respected my decision. That's partly why he arranged the teaching position in San Francisco to give me a fresh start. And now, Owen asked, his eyes holding hers. What kind of fresh start do you want now, Amelia? The question hung in the air between them, laden with possibilities neither of them had dared to voice. Amelia's heart beat faster as she considered her answer. I'm not sure, she said honestly. Everything has changed so quickly, but I know I don't want to live in fear. I want to build something meaningful somewhere I can make a difference. That could be many places, Owen observed. Boston, San Francisco, even here in the territory. Yes, Amelia agreed softly. Even here. The look they exchanged then contained a wealth of unspoken sentiment. Amelia felt herself drawn toward him as inevitably as iron to a magnet. Owen seemed to feel it too, for he leaned forward slightly, his gaze dropping to her lips. The moment was shattered by the unmistakable sound of approaching horses. Owen was on his feet instantly, moving to the window with his gun drawn. Riders, he confirmed grimly. 3 of them coming up the trail. Fear clutched at Amelia's heart. The Hardings, can't tell yet, but whoever they are, they're not being cautious about their approach. Owen turned to Amelia, his expression resolute. We need to leave. Now, out the back way we discussed. There was no time for questions. Amelia quickly gathered their most essential supplies while Owen checked his weapons. They slipped out the rear of the cabin, where a narrow path led up into a dense stand of pines. Stay low and follow me, Owen instructed in a whisper. If something happens to me, keep heading north until you reach Wilson's Creek, then follow it east. You'll eventually hit the road to Promise Creek. Nothing's going to happen to you, Amelia insisted, her voice fierce despite her fear. Owen's only response was a tight smile as he led the way into the trees. They moved as silently as possible, using the natural cover of the forest to mask their retreat. Amelia's heart pounded so loudly she was certain it would give away their position. Every snapping twig or rustle of leaves made her freeze, expecting shouts of discovery at any moment. They had covered perhaps half a mile when the first gunshot echoed through the trees. Owen pulled Amelia down behind a fallen log, his body partially shielding hers. They found the cabin, he murmured. Won't take them long to realize we've fled. As if to confirm his words, angry voices carried to them on the breeze too distant to make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. We need to move faster, Owen decided, helping Amelia to her feet. There's a ravine ahead that's hard to track through, if we can reach it before they pick up our trail. They abandoned stealth for speed, moving through the forest at a pace that left Amelia breathless. The terrain grew steeper, more treacherous, but fear drove her forward despite the burning in her lungs and the ache in her legs. Behind them, the shouts grew louder. They were being pursued, and their pursuers were gaining. The ravine appeared ahead, a jagged cut in the earth perhaps 15 feet deep, with a narrow stream at the bottom. Owen helped Amelia down its steep side, steadying her when loose rocks threatened her footing. They splashed across the shallow water and began to follow the stream bed, which would leave no tracks for their pursuers to follow. How far to safety? Amelia gasped, struggling to keep up with Owen's longer strides. 2 miles to Wilson's Creek, he answered grimly. Then another 3 to a ranch where we can find help. 5 miles. It might as well have been 50, Amelia thought despairingly as she stumbled over a slippery rock. Her city-bred body was not conditioned for this kind of flight, and already her strength was flagging. Owen seemed to sense her fatigue. Just a little further, he encouraged, taking her hand to help her over a particularly difficult stretch. We can rest when we reach the next bend. But before they could reach it, a shout from above froze them in place. Amelia looked up to see a man standing on the edge of the ravine, rifle aimed directly at them. "That's far enough, Zachariah," the man called. The scar on his right cheek identified him unmistakably as Jacob Harding. Owen pushed Amelia behind him, his own gun drawn but pointed downward. "This doesn't have to end in bloodshed, Harding," he called back. A harsh laugh was the only response. "The woman cost me a pretty penny. I aim to recoup my investment." "She's not property," Owen replied, his voice steady despite the danger. "She's a free citizen and under my protection." Two more men appeared on the ravine edge, younger versions of the scarred man, with the same hard eyes and cruel mouths. The Harding brothers, armed and eager for violence. 3 guns against 1, Jacob Harding observed with cold satisfaction. "Bad odds, Cowboy." Amelia felt Owen tense beside her, calculating their chances. They were trapped in the stream bed, exposed and vulnerable. Even if Owen managed to take down one of the Hardings, the other 2 would surely kill them both. "Let Miss Prescott go," Owen proposed. "Your quarrel's with me for interfering in your business." "Owen, no." Amelia clutched at his arm, horrified by his attempt at self-sacrifice. Jacob Harding seemed to consider the offer for a moment, then shook his head. "Nice try, Cowboy, but the woman's coming with us. You can die here, or walk away. Your choice." Time seemed to slow as Amelia watched Owen's free hand move imperceptibly toward his belt, where she knew he carried a second, smaller revolver. She understood with sudden clarity what he intended, a desperate gamble that might save one of them, but not both. Without conscious thought, Amelia acted. She had been holding the canteen, a heavy, metal container full of water. With all her strength, she hurled it up at Jacob Harding, hitting him squarely in the chest. The unexpected impact threw him off balance just as Owen drew and fired in one fluid motion. Jacob Harding fell backward with a cry of pain and surprise. His nephews returned fire immediately, bullets kicking up dirt and water around Amelia and Owen. Owen grabbed Amelia's hand, pulling her toward a cluster of boulders that offered some protection. "Run!" he shouted, firing again to provide covering fire. They scrambled from rock to rock, bullets whizzing overhead or shattering against stone inches from their position. Amelia's dress caught on a jagged edge, tearing with a loud rip as she yanked it free. "They're getting away," one of the Harding brothers yelled. "Get down there, Ellie." The sound of someone sliding down the ravine wall spurred Amelia and Owen to greater speed. They reached a bend in the stream bed that temporarily took them out of the line of fire. "There's a path up the side here," Owen said breathlessly, pointing to a narrow track that zigzagged up the steep slope. "It's our best chance." Amelia didn't waste breath responding. She gathered her torn skirts and began to climb, using roots and rocks as handholds. Owen followed, turning occasionally to fire at their pursuers, forcing them to take cover and buying precious seconds. The climb seemed endless. Amelia's hands were soon scraped and bleeding, her nails broken, her muscles screaming in protest. But the sound of pursuit splashing water, cursing voices drove her upward with desperate energy. They reached the top gasping for breath. Before Amelia could collapse in exhaustion, Owen was pulling her into the cover of the forest again. "Keep moving," he urged. "They won't give up easily." Somehow, Amelia found the strength to continue. They moved through the forest as quickly as stealth allowed, changing direction frequently to confuse their trail. Owen's wilderness skills were evident in the way he chose their path, avoiding open spaces, using rocky ground that wouldn't hold tracks, doubling back across their own trail to create confusion. The sun had begun its descent toward the western horizon when they finally reached Wilson's Creek, a wider, faster-flowing stream than the one in the ravine. Owen led Amelia into the water, and they waded upstream for several hundred yards before emerging on the opposite bank. "That should buy us some time," Owen said, helping Amelia up the slippery bank. "They'll expect us to go downstream toward Promise Creek." "Where are we going instead?" Amelia asked, wringing water from her sodden skirts. "There's a line cabin belonging to the Wilson Ranch about a mile from here. It's usually stocked with supplies, and it has a good defensive position." The mention of defense reminded Amelia of the danger they were still in. "Do you think they're still following?" Owen's expression was grim. "I know they are. I wounded the uncle, but not badly. And those boys won't give up while he's driving them." The knowledge gave Amelia a fresh surge of determination. She straightened her shoulders, ignoring the protests of her aching body. "Then we'd better keep moving." The look Owen gave her then was filled with a mixture of admiration and something deeper, more personal. "You're an extraordinary woman, Amelia Prescott." The simple compliment, delivered in his earnest voice, meant more to Amelia than all the flowery praise she had ever received from Boston suitors. "I'm just trying to stay alive," she demurred. "It's more than that," Owen insisted as they began walking again. "You've faced horrors that would break most people, yet you haven't lost your courage or your compassion." "Neither have you," Amelia pointed out. "You could have left me to my fate in Promise Creek, or handed me over to the Hardings today to save yourself. I could never do that." The quiet certainty in his voice sent a warm current through Amelia, despite her wet clothes and exhaustion. It wasn't just duty or principle that motivated Owen's protection, she realized. There was something personal in it, something that had grown between them over these weeks of shared danger and quiet companionship. The Wilson Line cabin appeared as the last light was fading from the sky, a simple structure similar to Morrison's cabin, but in better repair. Owen approached cautiously, gun drawn, but the cabin was empty. Inside, they found the provisions Owen had hoped for: dried beans, coffee, jerky, and most importantly, ammunition that fit Owen's revolver. There was also a change of clothes that Owen offered to Amelia, men's clothes, but dry and whole, unlike her torn and sodden dress. "I'll step outside while you change," he said, ever mindful of her modesty despite their desperate circumstances. Amelia changed quickly, rolling up the sleeves and pant legs of the too large clothing. The rough fabric felt strange against her skin, but the blessed dryness outweighed any discomfort. When Owen returned, he had gathered wood for a small fire. "We can risk it tonight," he explained. "The cabin is set against the hillside, so the light won't be visible from the main approach." As darkness settled fully around them, they huddled near the small fire, eating a sparse meal of jerky and beans heated in a battered pot found hanging in the cabin. The warmth of the fire and food in her stomach revived Amelia's spirits somewhat, though exhaustion pulled at her like a physical weight. "You should rest," Owen said, noticing her drooping eyelids. "I'll keep watch." "You need rest too," Amelia protested, but a yawn undermined her argument. Owen's mouth curved in a tired smile. "I'll wake you in a few hours to take your turn at watch." Amelia knew it was a concession to make her feel better rather than a genuine plan. Owen would never sleep while danger lurked outside, but she was too exhausted to argue further. She settled onto the cabin's single narrow cot, pulling a rough blanket over herself. "Owen," she murmured as sleep began to claim her. "Yes, thank you for everything." In the firelight, she saw his expression soften. "Sleep well, Amelia. I won't let anything happen to you." As consciousness faded, Amelia's last thought was that despite the danger, despite everything, she felt strangely content in this moment because she was with Owen. And somehow, that made all the difference. The crack of gunfire jolted Amelia from deep sleep. She sat up with a gasp, momentarily disoriented in the pre-dawn darkness. "Stay down." Owen's voice came from near the window, where a faint silhouette showed him crouched with his rifle. Memory and awareness flooded back. The Hardings had found them. Another shot splintered the window frame inches from Owen's head. He ducked, then rose to return fire in a smooth, practiced motion. "How many?" Amelia asked, sliding from the cot to the floor, staying low as Owen had instructed. "All three," he replied grimly. "They're using the trees for cover, about 50 yards out." Amelia crawled to the small table where Owen had left his second revolver. "I can help," she said, checking that the gun was loaded as he had taught her. Owen glanced at her, surprise and reluctance warring in his expression. "Have you ever fired a gun before?" "No," Amelia admitted, "but you can teach me now." A bullet thudded into the log wall, emphasizing the urgency of their situation. After a moment's hesitation, Owen nodded. "Keep your arm extended but not locked," he instructed quickly. "Squeeze the trigger, don't pull it, and aim for the center of what you can see." Amelia moved to the second window, staying to the side as Owen was doing. Through the dirty glass, she could make out shadowy figures moving among the trees. "We just need to hold them off until daylight," Owen said. "They have the advantage in darkness, but once it's light, the odds even out." As if in response to his words, a flaming arrow arced through the air and landed on the cabin roof with a soft thud. "They're trying to burn us out," Amelia realized with horror. Owen cursed under his breath. "The roof's damp from yesterday's wading through the creek. It won't catch easily, but we need to end this now." Before Amelia could ask what he meant, Owen was moving to the rear of the cabin, where a small window looked out onto the steep hillside. "There's a path that leads up and around," he explained quickly. "If I can circle behind them while you keep them focused on the front of the cabin." "No." Amelia's protest was immediate and fierce. "It's too dangerous. They'll kill you the moment they spot you." "They'll kill us both if we stay trapped in here." Owen's voice was gentle but firm. "This is our best chance, Amelia." Another flaming arrow hit the roof, and this time a small fire began to catch. The smell of burning wood filled the cabin. "Keep firing out the front window," Owen instructed. "Make them think we're both still inside. I'll work my way around behind them." Before Amelia could argue further, he was slipping out the back window, his movements quick and silent despite his exhaustion. Left alone, Amelia forced down her fear and moved back to the front window. She fired a shot toward the trees, then quickly shifted position to the other window to fire again, creating the illusion that two defenders remained in the cabin. "We know you're running low on ammunition, Zachariah." Jacob Harding's voice called from the darkness. "Send out the woman, and we'll let you live." Amelia didn't bother responding. She continued her pattern of firing from alternating windows, all while keeping an anxious eye on the growing fire above. Smoke was beginning to filter through the ceiling, making her eyes water and her throat burn. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. The eastern sky was just beginning to lighten when Amelia heard a shout from the direction of the trees, followed by the sound of a struggle. Gunfire erupted 3 shots in rapid succession, then a fourth that seemed to echo longer than the others. Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of the fire on the roof. Amelia held her breath, straining to see through the pre-dawn gloom. A figure emerged from the trees, walking toward the cabin with a slight limp. Amelia raised her revolver, finger tense on the trigger. "Amelia." Owen's voice called. "It's over." Relief flooded through her, so powerful that her knees nearly buckled. She threw open the cabin door and ran to meet him. Owen looked exhausted and battered. A bloody scratch ran across his left cheek, and he held his right arm at an awkward angle. But he was alive, and as Amelia reached him, he opened his uninjured arm to her. She went into his embrace without hesitation, pressing her face against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart, proof that they had survived, that they were both still here. The Hardings. She asked, her voice muffled against his shirt. Dead. Owen's voice held no satisfaction, only a deep weariness. All three of them. I gave them a chance to surrender, but he didn't need to finish. Amelia understood that men like the Hardings would never have surrendered, would never have stopped hunting them. You're hurt, she said, pulling back slightly to examine his injured arm. Just a graze, he assured her. Nothing serious. The growing light revealed the truth of his words. The bullet had torn through his shirt sleeve, leaving a bloody furrow along his upper arm, painful but not life-threatening. A crash from the cabin reminded them of the fire. They turned to see part of the roof collapse inward, sending sparks skyward in the dawn light. We need to move, Owen said. The Wilsons will see the smoke and come to investigate, but we should start heading toward their ranch. Amelia nodded, too drained for speech. Together, they began the journey back to civilization, leaving behind the burning cabin and the bodies of the men who had nearly destroyed them. The walk to Wilson's ranch took most of the morning. By the time the buildings came into view, both Amelia and Owen were stumbling with exhaustion. But the sight of riders coming to meet them, Marshal Collins among them, gave them the strength for the final stretch of their journey. The Wilsons welcomed them with the uncomplicated hospitality of frontier people. Owen's wound was tended, food and fresh clothing provided, and a room prepared where Amelia could rest in safety and comfort. Before she retired, Marshal Collins spoke with them both, taking their statements about the Hardings and promising to send a telegram to Amelia's father as soon as he returned to Promise Creek. He'll be overjoyed to know you're alive, Miss Prescott, Collins assured her. And I'll make arrangements for safe passage wherever you wish to go back east or on to San Francisco. Amelia thanked him, but made no decision about her destination. That choice, she knew, would depend on conversations yet to be had with Owen, with herself. After a day of rest at the Wilson Ranch, they returned to Owen's property. The reunion with Maggie was emotional, the housekeeper embracing Amelia with tears in her eyes and scolding Owen for his recklessness, even as she examined his injured arm with careful hands. Life at the ranch gradually returned to normal. The threat of the Hardings was gone, though Owen increased security as a precaution, unwilling to risk another attack on his household. A week after their return, a telegram arrived from Boston. Amelia's father expressed profound relief at news of her survival and offered to send funds for her immediate return home. Owen found Amelia on the porch that evening, staring at the telegram in her hands, her expression thoughtful. "You'll be able to go home soon," he observed, settling into the chair beside her. "Yes," she agreed softly. "Is that what you want?" The question hung between them, heavy with unspoken emotion. Amelia turned to look at him directly, studying the face that had become so dear to her over these extraordinary weeks. "I don't know," she admitted. "A month ago I would have said yes without hesitation, but now—" "Now," Owen prompted when she trailed off. Amelia took a deep breath, finding courage to speak the truth that had been growing in her heart. "Now I find myself wondering if home might be here instead." Owen's expression changed, hope warring with caution in his eyes. "Arizona is a harsh land, Amelia. The dangers you've faced aren't typical of daily life, but neither are they rare. It's not Boston or San Francisco." "I know that," she said. "And I'm not naive about the challenges, but there's beauty here too and purpose. The territory needs teachers, doesn't it?" "Desperately," Owen confirmed. "Promise Creek has been trying to establish a proper school for years." "Then perhaps that's where I'm meant to be." Amelia's voice grew stronger as the idea took shape, not as someone running from the past, but as someone building a future. Owen reached across the space between their chairs, taking her hand in his. And would that future have room in it for a ranch as well as a schoolhouse? Amelia's heart quickened at the implication of his words. It might, she said carefully, if the rancher in question were to make his intentions clear. A smile wider and more unguarded than any she had seen from him transformed Owen's face. Amelia Prescott, from the moment I saw you on that auction block, something in me recognized something in you. I didn't understand it then, but I do now. And what is it you understand? Amelia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. That some things, some people are worth any risk, that what I feel for you goes beyond protection or friendship. Owen's fingers tightened gently around hers. I love you, Amelia. And if you'll have me, I want to build that future with you, the school, the ranch, all of it. Tears welled in Amelia's eyes, but they were tears of joy rather than sorrow. I love you too, Owen. I think I have almost from the beginning, though I was afraid to admit it, even to myself. Owen stood, drawing her to her feet and into his arms. His kiss was gentle at first, then deepening as Amelia responded with all the emotion she had held in check for so long. When they finally parted, both breathless, Owen rested his forehead against hers. I promise to protect you, he murmured. I intend to keep that promise for the rest of our lives. And I promise to stand beside you, Amelia replied, through whatever challenges this wild land brings. 6 months later, on a perfect spring day, Amelia Prescott became Amelia Zachariah in a simple ceremony in Promise Creek's newly constructed church. Her father, who had traveled from Boston for the occasion, gave her away with tears in his eyes and genuine affection for the man who had saved his daughter's life. The schoolhouse where Amelia taught during the week stood across the street from the church, a symbol of civilization taking root in the frontier town. 3 days a week, she rode between Promise Creek and Owen's ranch, which was steadily prospering under their joint care. Life in the Arizona Territory was not without its hardships. There were droughts that threatened the cattle, occasional trouble with rustlers, and the everyday challenges of frontier existence. But there were also moments of transcendent beauty, sunsets that painted the mountains in shades of purple and gold, star-filled nights of incredible clarity, the wild profusion of desert flowers after a spring rain. And there was love deep, abiding love that had been forged in danger and tested by fire. A love that grew stronger with each passing season as Amelia and Owen built their life together. On their first anniversary, as they sat on the porch of their expanded ranch house watching the sunset, Amelia rested her head on Owen's shoulder. Any regrets? He asked softly, his hand covering hers where it lay against her slightly rounded belly, the first visible sign of the child that would join their family in the winter. Amelia thought of the journey that had brought her here, the terror of the auction block, the desperate flight from the Hardings, the gradual building of a new life from the ashes of her old plans. Not one, she answered truthfully. Every step, even the painful ones, led me to you. Owen's arm tightened around her shoulders as the last rays of the sun bathed them in golden light. From being sold bleeding on an auction block to finding love with the cowboy who had stepped forward to protect her, Amelia's journey had been extraordinary. But it was the ordinary moments like this, sitting with the man she loved as twilight settled over their home, that made it all worthwhile. I was yours to protect, she murmured, looking up at her husband's beloved face. Now, I'm yours to love. And to be loved by, Owen added, bending to kiss her with infinite tenderness. For all our days. As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Amelia knew with absolute certainty that she had found her true home not in Boston or San Francisco, but here in this wild, beautiful land, with this good and honorable man who had risked everything to save a bleeding stranger, and in doing so, had saved himself as well.